I want tariffs to hit Canada, Mexico, China, and Madagascar.
I was thinking Mozambique, and so it's interesting that we're both in the African nations.
Somalia, I don't care. Some absolutely random country we need to put 100% tariffs on tomorrow.
This podcast contains the arguably witty banter of two friends, Skippy and Doogles, that like to debate about investing. The content is intended to be entertaining and for informational purposes only, not investment advice. You should do your own research and consult a financial professional before using any of the information in this podcast, and especially before investing.
Welcome, everybody, to a new episode of the Skippy and Doogles Talk Investing podcast. How you feel about that? You like that?
That's as formal as you can be.
I know. I just can't be formal. This week, here's what we're going to talk about. If I came to you and told you that GDP might be getting a Trump-style makeover, that the world economy is shifting faster than you ever thought, and that 150 years of market crashes could tell us exactly how to survive what's next, what would you tell me? Would you say, Doogles, you out of your mind? Probably.
I'd say it sounds like our show.
We're going to kick everything off with a little crypto reserve talk before we get into those mind-blowing issues, and we're going to break it all down and figure out what that means for your money.
So have you ever seen, think back to the 90s. We're young millennials here. Think back to, George W. Bush doing something crazy or Clinton doing something crazy and being like, I cannot wait to watch Saturday Night Live this Saturday.
Yeah.
That's how I want people to think of the Skippy and Doogles show when it comes to the U.S. crypto reserve. What happened is the most hilarious. We have to break it down, Doogles. This is the most hilarious thing. One, did you see the press conference?
Which one? The crypto one?
U.S. Crypto Strategic Reserve press conference.
I did not. No.
If you want a good laugh, go back and watch that. It's really funny. All right. So here's what happened, and I can't even do it without laughing. What we did this week as a country is we took 200,000 Bitcoins and we put them in a strategic Bitcoin reserve. Okay?
Is that a flash drive?
Yeah. A flash drive in David Sachs's pocket.
Yeah.
All right.
Someone just took it and put a label on it that said strategic. Is that?
Hey, it's literally a piece of masking tape that says strategic on it. Okay. Here are the talking points, and they're such garbage. My goodness, they're such garbage. So first is this was no cost to taxpayers, Doogles. Right?
I like that.
That's what you have to say in politics. But what they did is they seized these 200,000 Bitcoins over the course of the last several years from criminals, and they've just decided not to sell them.
So they're they're vigilante justice is what's happening here.
Vigilante justice.
Okay.
So the current value of these Bitcoin is around $17 billion. You know what's a cost to taxpayers? The opportunity cost of the $17 billion that we could have if they sold these things.
So, yeah. Okay, I get that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So cost to taxpayers.
Yep.
Easily calculable cost to taxpayers of at least $17 billion. The other talking point here that I'm most fired up about is the reason it makes sense to have a strategic Bitcoin reserve, Doogles, don't you know, is because if you look at the historical performance of Bitcoin, it's been great. David Sachs is out there going, do you know if the other 95,000 Bitcoin that we seized and have already sold, if we would have held on to that, do you know what our returns would have been? My goodness.
Here's the thing. So on one hand, we're saying we're shutting down U.S. aid because it has $700 million in money, and we can return that to the people. And if you do that math, that's $2 per person.
Yeah.
But when we have $17 billion, we're just gonna hold on to that. We're just gonna hold on to that money. Is that what?
It's strategic. I wrote it on my Sharpie marker. Here's where I'm losing it. So. Yeah. By that logic, the logic of, do you know the opportunity cost of the other Bitcoin we already sold? This is a great performing asset. What we should do every time we seize a collector's Corvette that actually went up in value, we should go, we're going to create a strategic Corvette reserve. When we see some baseball cards from criminals, we got strategic Topps baseball card reserve, Pokemon cards, you name it. Anything we've ever seized that has gone up in the value in the past, we need a strategic reserve for it.
Except for the fact that this particular strategic reserve goes up in value when our currency is devalued. It's a subtle short on the U.S. economy
that didn't cost taxpayers any money.
Yeah, it didn't cost you nothing.
It's so bad. I mean, all the Bernie Madoff stocks that they seized, if those went up in value, we should have a strategic reserve for them. Any criminal that's ever held NVIDIA, we should have a strategic NVIDIA reserve. It won't happen that we'll buy at the top and that this is effectively momentum investing. I totally get it. I know why this came into existence. The logic behind it is laughable. Now, maybe I shouldn't care because the logic behind 50% of things that happen in politics is laughable, but oh my goodness.
It's fun to play with. I think things like this are fun to play with. And there's always so much nuance that goes into it. So it looks like you kicked off. It's the SNL version, that we have going here, but it's laughable. You don't even have to like go that deep. We don't have to parody it to be laughable. That's the best part about it.
Completely.
Just state the facts.
So if I went like Chappelle version, my laughable things would be, I think of other things that get seized, and like cocaine's an easy one, right? This feels like the cops sitting around there. No, honestly, this feels like the cops sitting around being like, hey, we seized some cocaine. And then the police chief being like, you know what? Our budget's a little short this month. Maybe we should sell the cocaine back to the drug dealers. And then, look, that'd be $100 million that the taxpayers did. I mean, you seized it. It doesn't make any sense. In the cocaine case, you're trying to take it off the streets. You don't want to sell it back to the streets. That doesn't make any sense. If you seized it from criminals, you actually want the money that the criminals stole from whoever they're stealing from. Come on.
You can't tell me there's not a strategic cocaine reserve right now sitting in.
I mean, there might be. That's really where I'm going.
I'm just saying. Just saying.
All right, bring us back to non-fantasy land, please.
There we go. Okay, so reach into the fishbowl here. And where we're going to go is we're going to talk about some market crashes. There's this Morningstar piece. I think it's interesting. I love when people dive in like deep into, as you like to bring up, the long-term data. And in this piece, it goes into 150 years going back to 1871. The head of research at Morningstar has got data, some of it monthly, some of it annual in the early years, but going back that far for 150 years, and looked at market crashes. And what it's going to say is, what are the patterns they follow, and how do you think about that then shaping investment strategies or not? High level, here we go. So we all know some of the big crashes, and to be clear, when they looked at and mapped out the crashes, it's basically any bear market. So the typical definition of when the market has gone down by 20%, that is what they deem a crash. It says there were 19 of those going back that far. The biggest ones always pop in the top of our heads. You're talking about the Great Depression, you're talking about the dot-com bubble, you're talking about 2008. But then there were a lot of other ones that they brought in that are smaller that we may not think about. Even thinking about just a few years ago in the COVID crash, right? I would not deem that a crash, but the market did go down 20%. So therefore,
I mean, there were a few weeks where it felt painful. The problem is it just disappeared almost as quickly as it appeared.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of thing, you do not see that frequently, where within 4 months, the market was back. So you just forget. Like, I mean, it's a blip in the end. That's a blip. But so I'll give you a couple high level facts here. So first, when they looked across this time period, if you put $1 in 1870, by January 2025, you're talking about $31,000. That's fascinating to me. And that's incorporating inflation into it. So if you look at the gross dollars, it'll be higher, but when you adjust it for net returns, that the high level that we talk about all the time up on this pod is the market for the U.S. historically has gone up, and you have to be able to weather these crashes and believe, like straight up the yellow sign on the wall, believe, Ted Lasso style. But in between, as I mentioned before, in between that first dollar and that $31,000, you have 19 crashes, some of them devastating. I want to highlight, when we talk about, we just mentioned the COVID crash went down over a matter of weeks, because you're right, because every day, there was one day it was like 8% down. Every day it felt like this could turn into something, mind-blowing, catastrophic, etc. It didn't end up lasting all that long. But when you go back to the Great Depression, the market went down almost 80%.
I mean, the coolest thing, they have this amazing chart in here that ranks those 19 bear markets, and they have decline, peak to trough, recovery time, and then they have a pain index. The pain index for the Great Depression is 100%, 79% decline. I mean, can you imagine? I'm pretty good I say pretty good. I feel like I'm pretty good at handling a 50% decline, and I mentally tell myself that a 50% decline can come at any point, and you have to weather that to be a stock market investor.
Yeah.
80% is where I think I'm over my skis, as is 99.9% of everyone else.
At that point, once you get to 80%, I mean, your mind's like, okay, it's gone.
Yeah, it has to be.
It's effectively.
And to fork out that next, to continue to make purchases during that time frame, it's just got to be so tough.
I wonder when, for me, mentally, I wonder when age-wise, or if, maybe I'm saying when, but it could be if as I get older, if there will become a point where I don't see the same opportunity that I see today when things start to crash. Because in my mind, right, like I remember back in 2002, 2003-ish, I was early in my in investing life, but I was like, oh, what's out there? What's out there, right? When a lot of, like, this was it was the beginning of the lost decade, really.
Yeah.
And the lost decade being, you have the peak in 2000, and then it did not get back to that peak until 2013. And so, like, that's what we call it, the lost decade. S&P 500 basically did nothing. And during COVID in March of 2020, I was buying daily. But that, in my mind right now, a reason I can do that is because I see decades in the future of investing. And so, like, this to me is opportunity. But if I was an 85-year-old at that point in time, I don't know mentally what I'd be thinking about. I probably wouldn't be as equity heavy as I was at that point either, so it might be a little bit different, but I'm curious.
I like to, yeah, I hear you. I will probably still be really excited, and I'll just know that I'm not the one that gets to spend the money, that someone else will get to spend the money.
Yeah.
I love to root for a good crash, man. It's one of my favorite things in the whole world.
You really do. I've mentioned this already before. What I don't like is these little, like, mini teasers. Like, if the market's going to go down, go down.
No, I want 30% to 50%. That's how I can't get excited about anything less than 30%, man.
So here, I just gave you my mentality in the future, and you gave a little snippet, but I just want to be clear. How do you think about staying calm? Like, what do you think keeps you, or is calm the right word? You can choose whatever word you want during these times. How do you manage your own emotions?
It's really simple stuff, but just the sound bites, I don't know if they fully equate to it. Unfortunately, it's Buffett quotes, right? Like, we like hamburgers in this house, so when hamburgers go on sale, we buy more. I mean, that's how I think of with especially the brands I've been picking up outside of the quantitative portfolio right now. Like, they're brands that have been around for 100 plus years that I use and revere. It just feels like things go on sale, and it's amazing. I really am a fan of it. But so, yeah, I also think the Morgan Housel book here is pretty incredible. Same as
Psychology of Money?
No, same as ever is actually the one that is the easiest when you think about a market crash, because it's like you can just witness the smartest people in the world saying this is what doesn't change. And if you can identify the things that don't change.
Yeah, I like that.
Like, I mean, pick any of the Buffett holdings from American Express to Coke on down the line. Like, those companies are going to be around in 50 years. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah. What's kind of fascinating to me right now is, and I sent this over to you so you have a little more detail than what I'll give on the pod here, but one of the portfolios that I manage that's not my own, as I've been adjusting that, because that has the mentality for that, it's a different strategy than what I have for my own portfolio. And when I was looking at it the other day, I realized that it is almost 100% international at this point.
Yes.
If there's Brazil, which I've talked about on here, a couple individual stocks from Brazil, the Brazilian ETF. I have an Israeli stock in there. I have a UK individual stock in there. And then there's also some Broadcom and some VTI, but they're like a smaller part of the portfolio. It's kind of fascinating. I was like, whoa, I don't know what that's saying about, like, exactly how I got. Well, I know exactly actually what it's saying. About
no, I mean, hold that thought, because that's important for the third topic.
Yeah.
When we talk about the changing world order and what it means for money. Here's what I'm thinking about this week, and I think I need to write this up, but with the right amount of patience, almost anything you want in life gets a 50% discount.
Yeah.
Bear with me for a second.
Okay.
This could be a new jacket. This could be flights to your favorite country. This could be almost anything, right? If you wait 24 months and consistently say, like, this is what I want, and can keep your emotions still, the stock that you want will probably be 50% off. The flight you want will probably be 50%. Like, I just see this happen over and over, and all it takes is a little bit of patience.
Sneakers, yes.
So
I like sneakers, and I like sneakers. I have the app GOAT That's where I get a lot of my shoes, not all of them, but a lot of my shoes from. And within the app, you can put your wants. It's just like, a wish list that you might have somewhere else. I love the fact that I can put my wants on there because as you're talking about, it just sits there. Like I've had shoes in there for years. And then I periodically, let's say quarterly or whatever, I'll just go through and see what the prices look like. Because when I initially want it, it's likely at a price that's going to be an order of magnitude higher than at some point in the future, because it's all market demand, right? On it's a marketplace. And so it's exactly that same thing. Stocks are even more volatile than sneakers from that perspective. And you can check the prices every day. And so I agree with you. If you want a thing, understand the value of the thing to you and wait. It's hard.
It's so easy with stocks because you can either put a limit order in or you can put a price trigger in. And the thing I love about this administration is that there's so much volatility, man. With whatever, your Kentucky bourbon gets hit one day and the stock is down 10%. Your Canadian railroad company gets hit with tariffs one day, taking tariffs off the next.
I'm going to tell you about a gosh darn limit order that is eating at me right now. So we on the pod like 3 weeks ago, I think, we're talking about Twilio. So I put in a limit sell order.
I didn't sign up for Twilio talk.
No, I know. But all I'm telling you is I put a limit sell order. That was like, it was not even that far. It was like 3% off of where the stock was. But I was just like, let me just do that and have it happen automatically. And then these gosh darn tariffs.
Wait, dude, I've been trying to figure this out. Now for Twilio, do the tariffs relate to like Canadian consulting and services that come on down? I don't even know. I really don't know.
You know how when there's election time and you got all the people on the different channels and they're like going county by county, they have their magic walls and all that kind of stuff. We need that right now. I don't know what is being tariffed.
They can't do it because it changes every 45 minutes. But it's like, do Canadian text messages cost more money? Like I honestly don't even know.
If they're incoming. To send a message to Canada, no.
You can
Same
shoot
price.
it to Canada? Yeah. I'm texting my Canadian friends right now.
Mm-hmm. Did you see the poll? I can't remember who put it out, but I felt like it was a credible one. But there was a poll that was just asking Americans, like, do you know what a tariff is? Because we're all up in arms either direction about the tariffs. And it's something like 50-50 was what they found. Like 50% of people knew what a tariff was.
I saw this one. I think I vividly remember that the minority of people knew what tariffs were, and I just laughed. I saw a stat this week. Actually, let's move on. I think we've already moved to the fast-changing world order as it relates to money. Is there anything else you want to hit with 150 years of stock declines?
Not in the detail, but just to wrap it up. I think that the high-level takeaways, we hit some of the details. The high-level takeaways we got there is markets crash. Historically for the U.S., they also recovered. Patience, we talked a lot about. It's about waiting. The timeline for crash is very great. You've got the 4 months that we talked about, or you can get 18 months, or you can get 13 years in the case of the dot-com bubble. So it's just good to know.
Or
patience
in other
is important.
countries like Japan, you can get 30 years. Or
30 years, yeah.
In some cases, the country's stock market goes to zero. I just always have to point those out because there's so many talking heads that say America is perfect and you don't have to have any thought invested in America. Generally, that's true. But let's not pretend that it can't happen.
No, absolutely. And the past 15 years here, outside of the couple bear markets, that we hit 2018 and 2020, 2022, they haven't lasted long enough for us to really remember the pain that it takes. And so people just should keep that in mind. It is hurting. Okay, we can transition now. You want to go to the fast-changing world?
Do I ever? Friend of the show, James McIntosh. He's been on. His appearance on the show is still one of the most fascinating issues I think we've ever debated. So if you haven't heard that and you're on YouTube or whatever, Google James McIntosh on the show. I think you'll be surprised at the level of nerddom that we dive into as it relates.
Yeah. It's great. I'm going to go back and listen to that one again because it's been a while, and especially now with all these strategic reserves.
Strategic reserves. There we go. James is always ahead of the curve. Douglas, you probably want to set this one up, but I'm going to jump to the middle of the article.
Do it. Just go.
For 3 months, we've been like going, hey guys, no, probably for 12 months, we've been like, hey, the U.S. stock market's expensive. At some point, international stocks have to do something. The hard part about saying something like that is you have no idea what the catalyst is going to be. No idea. And
Zero.
Even as little as 6 weeks ago, I would have had no idea. Here's what's happened since November 1st. European total market aerospace and defense stocks are up 40% and the S&P
Wow.
500 is flat, right? We know what the catalyst is now. The catalyst is leadership of America implying that maybe they won't help protect Europe in the way that we have in the past. Can you imagine holding something that went up 40% since November? That's 4 months. And
4 months.
I don't see this slowing down anytime soon because countries like Germany, who have been incredibly rigid with their budgets, have said we're spending money on defense.
I just got to say this. The tweet that I know you saw, there is a tweet that someone sent out, and they said, as a German, I'm not going to read this verbatim, but I'll paraphrase it. It goes, as a German, I just want to be super clear about this up front. What you are asking me to do is to build up my military, march across Poland, and potentially fight Russia. Just to be super clear. Can you? And obviously that's a go back to the World Wars, right?
Yeah,
that happened a bunch ago, and you're like, because last time what you told
didn't
us
go so well.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's the formal request on your end.
yeah, exactly.
It's amazing. And you see this happening in other places as well. International stocks have been hot the last month or two. My point is simply, you never know what the catalyst is. But this is why I scream from the rooftops about mean reversion, because there's always some sort of catalyst that just says, things head back to historical norms. It's kind of how
What
this
you
works.
don't know is time. What you don't know is time.
Yeah.
That's it. But absolutely right. So you hit on the military part. Then you've got tariffs, the trade wars that are involved in that. What kind of levels of air quotes do I have to put on trade wars? Because I don't know what dictates a trade war exactly right now. Like when you have a tariff that's implemented for 6 hours, is that a trade war?
Feels like a trade war to me. I mean, my job is to manage finances for businesses, and it's not a fun job. It's really not a fun job because the uncertainty, this is the last graph here. Trade policy uncertainty index is second highest in the last 40 years. It's just so hard to plan what's going to happen in the next 3 months, what's going to happen in the next 5 years. And businesses thrive on that. You talk about why the U.S. has been a friendly place to do business historically.
Yep.
A large part of that, I think, foundational piece of that is that you have certain standards that you feel like you can trust and will be upheld. And that's been tough.
It's been tough is an understatement. I can only imagine.
I've had lots of 3 a.m. wake-up calls.
What's coming and hitting me hard, I can't remember if I've brought this up before, this book. There's this book I read 2 years ago called The End of the World is Just the Beginning. Have we talked about that on the pod before?
Briefly, refresh my memory.
Yeah. It's written by, I believe, Peter Zeihan is his name. He writes about geopolitical stuff all the time.
Well, yeah, this is totally on my list. I think I might have, yeah.
You should read it. The premise of the book is as such. Since World War II, the U.S., and in particular the U.S. Navy, has been the reason why global trade has been able to exist and has liquidity in the market because we protect the world effectively. Like what I mean by that is we protect the trade of the world. Like people view the U.S. as we're going to keep the pirates away. We're going to make sure that this channel can be used, etc. That's the premise. And then he says, so what happens when the U.S. decides we're not going to do that anymore? And so the U.S. pulls back in, becomes a bit more nationalistic. And then what the book goes is it goes through like energy, financial markets, etc. and goes to and says, if you then have to, if you take away globalization at a whole and different regions have to support themselves, what does that look like? And so you look at what are the minerals and other commodities that each region of the world has. What don't they have? What are they able to do? What are they not able to do? And it's just a fascinating look. These kinds of things are, you can't call it nonfiction because it's speculating about the future, but it's not exactly fiction either.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, the scenario is obviously fiction, but it's based on research.
What's the word for forward-looking historical fiction?
Yeah, I don't know. Sci-fi? I don't know. But it's interesting, and like it's really just coming up in my head right now because not that we are completely doing that, but you can start to see, especially with in Ukraine, you're like, oh, you see the minerals that they have there and how important those minerals are. We've seen this over the past couple of years, how important those are to other places in the world. And if that's shut down, you go, ooh, okay, how does the U.S. come up with that? How does Brazil come up with something? And so it's really popping up right now. We'll put it on the Substack, skippydoogles.substack.com, the book link. So if you all want to read it, you can take a look.
Yeah, the naive part of me always thought that at some point when the U.S. deficit got out of control, we'd have to go beg our friends around the world and be like, guys, we spent a little too much money. Is there any way you can help out with us? Like we've tried to help you out for 50, 60 years, whatever. But I'm starting to think maybe that won't be the best approach for us.
I don't think so at all. It's definitely not the one we're going to take, regardless of whether it's the best one.
Seems like we're not headed that direction.
I picture a political cartoon of some sort where, like the old black and white cartoons where someone's like, geez, and they have their holding their little hat, just crawling up to somebody with like a pot trying to get money. Like, I kind of do feel like there's some kind of political cartoon that's going to come out like that.
Yep, we're ready
you might actually do it. Okay, you want to ready to move on to the last one?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay, GDP, gross domestic product. All right, I'll say let's zoom out for a second. Whenever someone decides that it might be time to change how something's calculated, it's always good to say, how exactly does this benefit you? Because the story that comes out with anything like this is going to be that this is the best calculation, it's the right calculation, we've just been doing it incorrectly, et cetera. But you just have to ask how this benefits. This, for GDP in particular, what is being proposed is that government spending not count toward GDP. That's what's being proposed. And historically, it has been. Now, they take other calculations into account. Like, some people take government spending out when they're trying to look at what exactly might be happening in the economy in certain ways. And so there's that. But when you take it out overall, there's this question. Should it be included? Should it not be included? And the Trump administration right now wants to remove government spending from GDP calculations. I'll leave it there for a moment and get your reaction.
Why do they want to do that?
So they think that removing it will take away artificial inflation right now that comes from government spending. Elon in particular is saying that government spending does not add value in a lot of times to the economy. And so therefore including government spending, and it artificially inflates GDP for the country.
I very rarely like this, but I'm honestly curious. I don't mean that I'm very rarely curious. I'm a little baffled. Like, why?
Okay, sorry.
The money that government spends is somehow different than the money I spend? Like, yeah. A government job that pays $60,000 a year is somehow different than a private sector job that pays $60,000.
Here's the deal. The argument I just gave you is the stated argument.
I want more details already, Doogles.
The skeptical argument, and the reason I said you have to ask how does this benefit somebody, is when an administration comes in and starts saying we're going to slash a whole lot of government spending, but that same administration is getting projections, maybe because of other activities, that GDP is about to fall. They don't want to be on the hook for GDP falling, so therefore you change how GDP will be calculated. And you probably want to take out the thing that you were trying to cut. It's kind of like how EBITDA, right? EBITDA. Like when that comes in, you're like, hold on, our income's not going to look as good if we include...
So hold on, you're saying that the current administration basically wants to run future financial statements on adjusted profit margins.
Yeah.
So they can... Yeah. Is that all that's going on here? I mean...
I think that's what's happening
in the AP, and there's not a ton of details here.
No, I think that's what it's the most Occam's razor. It is the most logical explanation for this is that people are coming through and saying we want to cut a lot of government spending, and those same people are saying government spending shouldn't count in a calculation that we're judged on. That is a pretty straightforward.
Let's have the more abstract conversation though. What explain to me? So take the administration's view out of it. Yeah. Just two friends talking about GDP as they do, This happens all the time.
As they do.
Is it 60,000, if I have this job that happens to be, we can bring it local if we want. 10 miles down the road, there is a huge government office that does everything related to weather in the United States. If someone works there for $60,000, do they support my community less than someone that drives 10 miles down the road the other direction, works for a private company, and makes $60,000 a year? I'm not sure that I see much of a difference there.
No, I don't.
Well, this isn't a fun debate, Doogles.
No, it's not. Because I would leave GDP in there, and then people can take it out on their own. Because certain calculations that you have for GDP, you might want to take it out.
There's all sorts of private sector non-farm payroll
sorts.
jobs. Like we already
All
have
sorts. Yeah. And so like if the government is spending on infrastructure or payroll items or defense, and you're going to tell me that that's not real economic activity, then what is real economic activity? But it makes sense to me that you want to adjust a scorecard. And so like that's the only thing that makes sense to me. I know you said to get away from that, but I'm just saying I think like that makes sense. But in the abstract, I would say government spending is to me obviously economic activity that makes sense. And the government spends on a number of things that hit the everyday person. And that doesn't mean that some of it's not wasted, just like private sector spending. Some of it's wasted, but you can't say, but that, like, you shouldn't have bought those pencils, and so therefore don't include that in GDP. No, you bought the freaking pencils, so it should be included in GDP.
I don't like pencils. It is removed from GDP going forward.
Mm-hmm. Now, so then you say, you saw the, what was it, Poly Market, I think, that you sent over? It's like they're betting on whether or not a recession is going to happen. So there are forecasts that GDP in the U.S. could fall. There are forecasts that we're going to hit a recession, higher probability we're going to hit a recession. And you kind of want to avoid that. Like, you want to avoid that scorecard. And so how do we measure things such that that's not the case?
I don't know. I mean, there's some talking points out there that say, even from the Treasury Secretary, that says the U.S. needs to take its medicine. I'm pretty easy.
Can you give more detail about that? What medicine are you talking about?
Meaning that artificial inflationary government spending has propped up the economy for the last 2 to 4 years. Yeah. And we all know how that ends if you consistently spend more money than you bring in. And so
it's not good.
If take your medicine means we actually have to balance the budget, that means spending has to come down. That means subsidies have to come down, and the economy and stock market will have to adjust to that, but it puts us on more solid footing. Like, I like that talking point. I don't like that talking point when you seem to be bringing that amount of pain, yet still not balancing the budget. I can't even come up with a personal household analogy here, but it's like, this household, we were spending way too much money on credit cards every month, and then we decide we're no longer allowed to buy groceries, but we spend the same amount of money, excess money, on credit cards every month. It's like, now I'm hungry and I didn't actually solve the core root of my problem. So I can get on board with the pain if the root cause of the problem actually gets solved. It seems like right now we're signing up for pain without actually solving the problem.
Yeah, I'm my mama said, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. I've never listened until this moment. But I think I'm going to not step in. Because you just set me up. You just alley-ooped the crap out of me. But I'm not going to go political because you don't want to go political. So
yeah, I tried to avoid it. Unfortunately, the tie between, I hate talking political stuff. The tie between finance and politics in the last 6 weeks has been incredibly strong. We'll try and steer clear of that going forward. Here's the deal.
Yes, but do you remember when you were like, a president cannot influence the stock market? Do you remember that? You did not anticipate.
I don't think I said exactly that. I don't think a president should drive. Well, maybe I have to eat that one. If a president changes tariffs every 35 minutes for an extended period of time, I told you on the monthly, the second of the month, I was like, oh, this is really going to happen every 30 days for the next 46. Like, I did not believe this. Can't wait. April 2nd is coming in no time, and we're going to have to talk about what tariffs are enacted.
Because I think what you were meaning at that point was around like the policies that the government creates and the influence that government policy can have. But that's different than the market runs off of predictions on the future, basically. Like, it's about the future. When the future when it's uncertain and it's hard to know what's going on, then the market will react to that.
All right, we're going to do one thing before we wrap up the show. I think we need to start a campaign among Skippy and Doogles listeners to add one country to help keep us sane to the tariffs conversation. So on April 2nd, when tariffs are a hot topic again, here's what I'd like. Maybe we need a hashtag or something. I want tariffs to hit Canada, Mexico, China, and Madagascar. Don't you think we should put tariffs on Madagascar?
I was thinking Mozambique, and so it's interesting that we're both in the African nations.
Somalia, I don't care. Some absolutely random country we need to put 100% tariffs on tomorrow.
Percent tariffs. Yeah. Okay. So choose. That's up to you. It's up to you all. You choose which country, and We're going to do it. We're going to make it happen right here
You
from the
said
Skippy and Doogles show.
Mozambique? Okay, that
Yeah.
could work. I mean, we
Yeah.
could do something tiny in South America, too. There's lots of options. Like,
Not Brazil. Can we just
no,
not do
Brazil. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I don't need that mess in my life right now.
Oh, you don't need that stress. All right, that's a wrap, y'all. So I got feedback last week, Doogles. People are fired up when they submit listener mail and it doesn't get read on the show. Sorry, guys, there's a lot of listener mail. All right.
Yeah.
We can't cover every piece of listener mail every week, but keep sending it in. skippydoogles@gmail.com. YouTube is just getting going. If you use the YouTube music player or anything else, please subscribe to the show there.
Leave a review. Rate
Yeah,
the podcast. It helps
Give it
a
a
lot.
thumbs up. All that stupid stuff that your 11-year-old hears on YouTube every week. We're on pretty much every other podcasting platform, and skippydoogles.com is kind of your source for things. Also, the Substack is like the best place if you just want Monday morning, all these articles that we talk about to hit your inbox, get to see the graphs and everything else. Just get on the Substack, because that's actually the intern is doing great work there, Doogles. Let me tell you, those are looking solid,
crushing it. And if you want an internship, please email interns@skippydoogles.com, and you might get a "this is not a real email address" reply.
I don't know. Our current intern might fight the new intern.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
Maybe we'll talk to you. All right.
Thank you, everybody.